What's happening, financial coaches? It's Pete here. I want to give you a realization of mine, and I think we kind of all know this, but it's hard if you're not rich to kind of believe it. And I've come across this with so many people. If you are working with financial coaching clients who are spending a lot of money trying to live the Instagram lifestyle, maybe they are victims of FOMO, the fear of missing out, right? They want to look good for their friends, family. They want to post pictures of vacation. It's funny because I even know someone who, when they are on vacation, take a ton of different photos and then post them throughout the year to make it look like that one vacation is a dozen vacations, if that makes sense. So, the idea of looking rich, I think, is so pervasive, and especially in the social media world, especially in a world where, hey, I can't necessarily verify it, or, prove that you're not on vacation, and it's, if it's very easy to kind of create the image of the lifestyle that you want because people aren't following you specifically. They don't live near you, they don't talk to you all the time, and they want to look like they're living the high life. You can certainly do it. I mean, heck, there was an article about how there is a fake private jet in LA that you can rent for $60 an hour for photos, right? You just go on it and take your photos, and it's just a set. It's not even a plane. So this is a real thing. And even if people aren't getting totally consumed by it, I think this is one of the underlying reasons that people spend so much money, right? And I want to talk to you today about kind of a process I've used to try to help people work through this. And I'm not immune to this either. I like nice things. I like, going to nice golf courses and taking nice vacations. I'm not one to actually post this kind of stuff on social media because I'm also a pretty private person in general. Sorry, calendar's going up. So, I don't feel like I need to show people, but there was a phase in my life, especially, 20 years ago when I was broke. I just had this conversation with someone that they were like, yeah, I got married in 2002. Why didn't you come to my wedding? And I was like, 2002? I'll tell you why I didn't come to your wedding, because I wasn't going to go to Hawaii in 2002 because I was dead broke, right? I mean, the idea of going to a nice destination for someone's wedding was just out of the question when, I was concerned about putting meals on the table. Now, there are some people who'd be like, listen, I'm going to do it and I'm going to charge up the credit card and gosh darn it, I'm going to go into debt and just have experiences in life. And, you can make that happen too. But to me, I was broke. And so being broke, you don't want to necessarily show that you're broke. And, I went through this phase too, where you want to look like you're doing better than you are. Drive a nicer car, live in a nicer apartment, buy a big home, buy, expensive jewelry, Birkin bags. I don't know a Birkin bag, but you kind of catch my drift here. And this causes a lot of spending problems for people. A lot of people have spending issues when we look at doing budgets. A lot of this is because, the income is here, but the spending is here. And why is the spending here? Because we want that feeling of being able to live the life we want, even if we're not producing to provide at the life we want, right? And so one of the things that I try to do with people, and it's a process and it kind of happens over a conversation, is how do I get people to understand that rich people typically don't want to look rich, that poor people that want to be rich and be perceived as rich want to look rich, and they want to provide those affectations and the kind of those illusions of being rich. And really the first time that this dawned on me was I was doing a lot of business networking, going to business networking events, and you have some people pulling up in nice cars, but not necessarily like exclusive cars, Acuras, Cadillacs, Audis, whatever, right? Cars that are affordable, but kind of nicer. And, a lot of these people had them leased or, on 8-year payment plans or whatever. And they would come into these things and talk about, how great their business is going. And they would try to show some of the affectations of this. But as I started networking over the years and getting to know some of these people, some of these people that you think are rich because they have all the trappings of a luxurious lifestyle, and you find out, hey, their business is on the verge of going under, or, they're almost living out of their car, or they have a full-time day job repairing air conditioning units because this business that they are purporting to be very successful is not making any money, right? That they are working during the day to try to subsidize the business that they say is going really well, or whatever it might be. And so, the reality is there's a big difference between pulling up in a leased Audi versus a paid off Bentley, right? And so as I got to know some other people and some rich people, and as I started to make more money myself, you start to go through this phase of where all of a sudden you were trying to show how successful you were and are, or whatever it might be. But as you do become successful, you don't want to look rich for any number of reasons. And I've kind of talked to some of my friends who have certainly outpaced me in their success. And, and I see a lot of the same in motivations for them. And one of the reason is, as you do well, say, as you and your peer group continue to do better in life, and maybe you start outpacing some of those people, you don't want to necessarily make them feel inadequate. You don't want to make your close friends and, some of your lifelong friends feel like they're lesser of a person. And so there's a lot of times when you don't want to necessarily talk about how amazing that bonus was, or the new client you got, or whatever it might be, because you don't want them to feel inadequate and feel like, bitter towards you. There's also other reasons. You get hit up for more donations. I remember, as I started to increase my donations to some of these places, suddenly you start getting these requests. Hey, can we grab a cup of coffee sometime? Can I buy you a lunch? And it's because that they want to hit you up for more money. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't be generous, but there's a lot of times when you're donating to some places or supporting them and doing what you think is nice, and it's not particularly painful, but as they see an opportunity to increase, donation fivefold, tenfold, or whatever, and they ask you for it, it actually would behoove you to say, hey, maybe I'm not doing that great, not necessarily projecting that and letting people know so that you don't get hit up for every charity. I mean, especially as you started as I made donations to more places, you start getting hit up by more, and you start getting told that this person is supporting our group or sponsoring us, and can we do more? I remember when I sponsored my first external podcast, I didn't realize that some of those podcast guys said, hey, this person's sponsoring my podcast, and we're talking to other podcast owners, and all of a sudden you're getting hit up by 4 or 5 other podcasts for sponsorships too, and it's just something I couldn't necessarily afford to do. But so it actually helps you to kind of be very humble and not show people how much you're bringing in, or what you earn, or what your capacity is. Even as I bought additional cars, one of the things that I did was when I would bring them home, I would just try to put them in my garage as quietly as I could, pick them up midday, put them in my garage, because I didn't necessarily want my neighbors to see, hey, did he just buy another car? What has he got? Because I think a lot of those times, people can start feeling a little bitter, instead of being supportive and like, hey, you're doing really well. I think there's a lot of kind of this human nature of, oh, look at them, they're trying to show off. I had a friend of mine who threw a big party at their house, beautiful house, and they had a tent set up and catered the whole affair. And I asked them why they never did that again. They said that because the general consensus from it was that people were angry that we were just trying to show off our success. And the reality is that they had been successful. They had, some really great events happen in their life, some business opportunities that really kind of took them to the next level. And what they wanted to do was share that with some of their close friends and family. And they had people over to help them celebrate kind of these landmark moves for them. And the only thing that really happened was a lot of people ended up being bitter. So they never did it again. And these are the types of things that can happen when people actually become rich. And so to me, like I said, in the networking, what I realized is that the people who were really confident in themselves, they weren't necessarily trying to look rich, they were really focused on what they provided as a business, were often sometimes the most successful. There was a guy who I got to know that had a tire place, sold car tires, and he came in just kind of casual khakis and polo shirt, and as I got to know him over the years, he's got a tire empire, right? But it's one of those things where, if he were walking around, and he says that, if he went to these places and driving his Bentleys and his Lamborghinis and all these other things, and just showing how well he's doing, the reality is people probably wouldn't come buy his tires, even though he offers great deals on the tires and he's one of the cheapest place to buy tires for cars. He's like, if this is the image that I'm projecting to people, they're going to think, hey, I don't have to help this guy. He makes tons of money. I shouldn't buy from him. He's ripping me off of my tires or whatever it is, right? So it's ironic, I think, in a lot of cases that when people do make money, they don't want to look rich. And when they don't have money, they do want to look rich. And I bring this whole up. I spent the last 10 minutes here kind of talking about this phenomenon that rich people don't want to look rich and poor people do want to look rich, to make a point, is that once you start getting your clients to understand that, especially people who aren't necessarily rich, particularly people that are trying to look above wherever they are in life, trying to create this Instagram life image, of being very successful. Once they realize that, they can start feeling more comfortable just showing who they really are. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that they will, but what I try to do with people is kind of walk them through the self-discovery process of, do you have some rich friends? Are they always showing off? Are they always coming to parties talking about how much money they have? Usually not, because they probably won't get invited to many parties. They probably will have to abandon their old friends that are maybe at a lower income stage of their life, right? And just surround themselves with people of the higher income. And a lot of people don't want to do that. A lot of people, even if they have new money, they want to have their friends. They want to kind of have the experience for their children that they had, whatever it might be. So once people start really internalizing that rich people don't want to look rich, poor people try to look rich, and then they can see and reflect that on themselves and say, hey, that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to elevate my status by creating this image that really isn't appropriate. Once they see that and they say, listen, if I gave you $50 million, and this is something I've said to some people, if I gave you $50 million, you won the $100 million lottery, what would you do? And the reality is, as they think through it, they wouldn't just buy beautiful clothes and sports cars and drive around to their friends' houses and show up at their, the next barbecue with their buddies, just like flashing money and throwing it around. They would probably be very humble about it. And so why embrace that kind of humility later if you do get rich? Why not right now? Get comfortable where you're at. And actually, to be honest, the irony of it is that people might think you're more successful than you are if you are just humble and accurate about kind of your lifestyle, right? But it's almost ironic for the other way now when I do go to events or when I do go to networking events or I am introduced to other people, and when they put so much effort into trying to look successful, I'm very leery about it. I'm very skeptical that they are. It's always the ones that are very humble and pretty accurate, and they share honestly with to me about what they do. That sometimes I'm usually think, hey, they probably have not only good balance in life, but they may be the most successful person in this room. So anyway, that was my long-winded way of kind of just explaining sometimes what I'm trying to do with people, not necessarily over a session. Sometimes it can happen that quickly, but usually over multiple sessions, with people who are trying to spend their way into an image that really isn't them. And how do we kind of undo that? How do we get people spending back down to where it should be for their lifestyle by addressing kind of this insecurity about what their life is and trying to strip away this desire, this need to make themselves look like something they're not. So hopefully that helps. Sometimes this is ongoing. I still have people that over the years, they've come to realize it, but it's really hard to embrace. They've gotten themselves into a pattern of spending or trying to project an image that is something other than what they really are. And so it's not simple. What I'm saying here is that, yeah, you might be able to make progress with people in one conversation. It might take years for people to just come to this realization, right? Some people, because they've never been in that category of being wealthy, of being rich, being in surplus, that they don't really know what the mentality is there. And so it might take them a while for them to realize that. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that up because, so many times I'm working with people with spending problems, and the issue is not fundamentally the budget. The issue is not fundamentally a math problem. It's a behavioral problem, and it's a behavioral problem because of some desire underneath that is tilting their spending. So hopefully that helps. I'll see you later.